Welcome, deeply curious minds, to another expedition into the critical topic shaping our digital world. Today, we are strapping on our digital safekeeping hats for a truly essential deep dive: safeguarding controlled unclassified information, or CUI. Imagine for a moment that you're the guardian of an incredibly valuable vault. Not just any vault, right? But one that holds your company's most sensitive blueprints. Maybe your meticulously compiled client lists, those hard-won competitive strategies, stuff that took years to develop, or perhaps even cutting-edge research. Your core mission is clear. How do you make absolutely sure that only the right people, with the precise, necessary permissions, can even look at what's inside, let alone touch it, modify it, or, heaven forbid, accidentally, or worse, maliciously walk out with it? That right there, that's the heart of protecting CUI. It's really about establishing absolute trust and granular control over your most valuable digital assets, ensuring they stay exactly where they belong, seen only by the eyes authorized to see them.
And for non-federal organizations tackling this absolutely crucial mission, especially if you're working with federal agencies or handling federal contract info, the essential guide, really the blueprint for this digital vault, is NIST Special Publication 800-171 Revision 3. Now, this isn't just some dry government manual, you know. It's the authoritative, pretty comprehensive framework specifically designed to help organizations like yours protect CUI when it's sitting on your systems in your environments. It's especially vital when there aren't other specific safeguarding rules already dictating things. Think of it as the go-to doc for building robust, defensible digital security, building that trust and control from the ground up.
That's perfectly put. So today our mission is to peel back the layers of this foundational document. And we're starting with what many consider the absolute cornerstone. We're taking a deep dive into access control. It's the very first, and you could argue the most critical control family listed in NIST 800-171 Air 3. You can literally think of it as laying out the intricate blueprint for your digital gatekeepers, defining precisely who holds which keys to which doors under what specific conditions. This family, it's all about setting up the definitive rules for every single door, every window, every pathway into your CUI. It meticulously manages who gets into your system, what they're actually allowed to do once they're inside, and how you manage every single access point, from a simple user account to, a highly privileged admin login or a mobile device connecting remotely, or even how an external cloud service talks to your sensitive data.
Precisely. The access control family is incredibly broad, and it has to be, because access is just so foundational. It covers, well, everything from the basic day-to-day stuff like managing individual user accounts all the way to the highly sensitive world of privileged access, the complexities of remote connections, and even how external systems, like your cloud services or third-party partners, interact with your CUI. And it's listed first for a very strategic reason. It really underpins virtually every other security measure you'll put in place. Without strong, well-managed access controls, a lot of other safeguards, frankly, just won't be effective. They'll leave your CUI vulnerable regardless of what else you do. It truly is the initial layer of defense, making sure only authorized individuals and processes can even start to interact with CUI, protecting its confidentiality right from the get-go.
All right, let's jump right into the deep end then. Our first requirement, the one that really sets the stage for everything else: 03.01.01 account management. So why is managing accounts just so profoundly critical? I mean, it seems basic, but
It seems basic, but it's fundamental, because truly every single account within your system, whether it's for a person or some automated process, it represents a potential way in, a door into your digital environment. If you don't have a crystal clear, precise understanding of who has access, or maybe worse, if old, unused accounts are left just lingering, like
Cons?
forgotten rusty keys from an employee who left months ago.
Right, you're leaving a digital door ajar.
Exactly. You're not just leaving it ajar, you're practically leaving it wide open for unauthorized access. And this isn't just a theoretical risk, right? It's an open invitation. Maybe it's accidental data exposure, someone stumbles onto info they shouldn't see, or far more dangerously, a malicious actor actively looking for vulnerabilities, maybe exploiting that forgotten account with default credentials.
Yeah, that happens all the time.
It does. So for CUI, this isn't just, a best practice. It's your absolute foundational first line of defense. It's non-negotiable if you want to safeguard sensitive information.
Okay, so proper account management prevents unauthorized access. It reduces the attack surface.
Absolutely. It significantly reduces your organization's overall attack surface. Think of it like this. The fewer unused or badly configured accounts you have, the fewer targets an attacker has to aim for. Simple math, really. And crucially, it provides clear accountability. Who did what, when, why, Without defined roles and strictly controlled accounts, trying to trace actions during an incident, it becomes nearly impossible, like finding a specific raindrop in a storm. So it's all about ensuring that only authorized individuals and processes, the ones with a legitimate, defined need to know, can interact with CUI, safeguarding its confidentiality at every single touch point.
Okay, so we get the vital why. Now let's get into the nitty-gritty. What exactly does NIST expect you to do? How do you achieve this robust account management? Let's unpack the core actions.
It's quite comprehensive, actually, thoughtfully broken down into 7 key parts. Each one is pretty crucial for maintaining control over that digital vault we talked about. First up, A, define. You have to clearly state what types of system accounts are allowed in your environment, and, just as important, which ones are strictly prohibited.
Okay, like what?
Well, for example, your policy might explicitly say standard user accounts, administrator accounts, and service accounts for automated stuff are okay. But at the same time, it would strictly prohibit things like shared accounts.
Where multiple people use the same login.
Exactly, because that just kills individual accountability right there. You can't tell who did what. So this clarity in definition provides the foundational rules for everything else. Next, B, lifecycle management. This is huge. It's about establishing and, importantly, diligently following comprehensive policies for the entire life of an account. From the moment it's created, which might need things like background checks or manager approvals first, through enabling it, modifying its privileges as roles change, and then the crucial steps of disabling or completely removing it when it's no longer needed.
So it's cradle to grave for every account.
Precisely. This systematic, managed approach makes sure access always lines up with current needs and minimizes the risk of those lingering, unmanaged accounts. Automating as much of this as you can, that really helps cut down on human error. Then C, authorization. You need to specify in really granular detail who exactly are the authorized users, what their group and role memberships are, and what their specific access authorizations, their privileges actually allow them to do. It's about meticulously mapping every role in your organization to its precise, defined set of permissions. An engineer might get access to specific CUI design docs.
But marketing wouldn't.
Right. A marketing role, even in the same company, would be explicitly blocked from those same files. This structured approach is really the backbone of controlled access. Following that, D, valid access. This point really hammers home the need-to-know idea. Access should only be granted not just based on a valid authorization, but critically, also based on the intended usage of the system right then and there.
So even if I can access something generally, I only get in if it's for the specific task I'm doing.
That's the idea. It prevents general access from becoming a free-for-all. Your access for a specific task needs to be explicitly linked to that purpose. Fifth, E, monitor. Account management isn't a set it and forget it kind of deal, not at all. You have to continuously monitor how these system accounts are being used.
Are people doing what they're supposed to?
Exactly. Are there anomalies, like an account suddenly trying to access systems it never has before, or logging in at weird hours? Active monitoring helps you catch potential misuse or compromise much faster. Sixth, and this is really crucial for security, F, disable accounts when. NIST lays out specific non-negotiable conditions. Accounts must be disabled when they expire. When they've been inactive for a period your organization defines, maybe 30, 45, 60 days, you decide.
That's the organization-defined time period.
Right. Also, when they're no longer associated with a user, like someone leaves or changes departments when they violate policy, or if significant risks pop up related to that individual. A common mistake is delaying this disablement. That just creates immediate windows of vulnerability. And finally, G, notify personnel. Make sure the right people or roles in your organization are promptly notified when accounts aren't needed anymore, when users leave or transfer roles, or when someone's system usage or need-to-know status changes. This keeps security folks, HR, managers, all in sync on access status, prevents security gaps, maintains accountability.
Let's make this super practical. Let's think about that fast-growing tech startup again. They just landed a federal contract, now they're handling CUI for the first time. This is a huge shift for them.
Okay, yeah. For this startup, applying 03.01.01 would mean a pretty significant step up from their usual practices. For instance, they'd start by explicitly defining account types, developer accounts, project manager accounts, finance accounts maybe. And crucially, they'd prohibit things like generic team accounts, because again, no individual accountability there.
Right.
So when a new developer joins, their account isn't just created on day one. It's provisioned only after HR confirms the background check is clear and their manager formally approves the specific access needed for the CUI they'll handle. If that employee then moves to a role that doesn't involve CUI, or they leave the company entirely, their CUI-related account gets disabled immediately, with automated alerts going straight to the IT security team and HR.
No delays.
No delays. Plus, they set an internal policy. Any account inactive for, say, 45 days, their defined time, gets automatically flagged and disabled. And of course, their IT security team is actively reviewing login logs, activity reports, probably daily, looking for anomalies, like a developer account trying to hit the HR system or accessing a CUI repository that's totally outside their assigned project scope.
That's a fantastic example, really highlights the proactive work involved. And, thinking about it, this isn't just about security for security's sake or just ticking compliance boxes. It feels like it's also about efficiency, reducing digital clutter.
It absolutely is. Every forgotten account isn't just clutter. It's a dormant, pre-authorized backdoor just waiting for a phishing attack to exploit it, or maybe an insider threat to activate it. Proactive, meticulous account management isn't just compliance. It's surgical threat reduction. A clean, well-managed account system is inherently more secure. Why? Fewer points of failure, fewer forgotten doors left ajar, and a clear audit trail for everything happening inside your vault.
Okay. Now, building directly on that idea of defining who has access, let's move to a principle that refines that access with almost surgical precision. Here's where it gets really interesting. 03.01.05 least privilege. I often call this the Goldilocks principle of security, finding that just right amount of access. Not too much that creates unnecessary risk, not too little that kills productivity, but precisely what's needed for a specific task and absolutely no more. So why is this principle so profoundly vital, especially when you're dealing with controlled unclassified information? What's the real benefit of being, well, maybe seemingly stingy with access?
Well, the reason least privilege is so vital, so fundamental, is that it drastically minimizes the potential damage if an account is ever compromised or misused. And let's be realistic, compromises happen. By granting only the bare minimum access needed for a user, or even an automated system process acting for them to do their assigned job, you drastically shrink the potential blast radius of any incident.
Ah, the blast radius. Good analogy.
Yeah, think of an explosion. Least privilege contains it, limits its impact to a very small area. If a low privilege account gets compromised, the attacker can only access what that specific account is authorized for. That significantly hinders their ability to move laterally across your network, hopping over to more sensitive CUI. It applies to users and system processes. They also need just minimal permissions. Honestly, many of the biggest breaches we've seen weren't from some super sophisticated zero-day exploit. They were attackers compromising an overprivileged account and then just walking around the network.
Right. They got the keys to the city with one phished password?
Exactly. Least privilege isn't really about restriction. It's more about containment for when, not if, a breach occurs.
Okay, so if least privilege is about precision, what does this precision permissions approach mean in practice? What are the key parts of actually doing it effectively?
There are four critical components that really define this precision approach. First, A, necessary access. This mandates that you allow only the system access that is truly necessary for users or processes acting for them to do their assigned tasks. If someone mainly reads CUI reports but never modifies them, they should only have read-only access to that CUI folder, period, giving them write access. That's an unnecessary risk just waiting to happen. This principle guides every single permission assignment. Second, be authorized security functions information. This goes beyond just general data access. You have to explicitly authorize access to what NIST calls organization-defined security functions and security-relevant information.
Okay, what falls under that?
Security functions are the really sensitive operations. Installing new software, configuring system-wide access rules, setting up auditing parameters, managing vulnerability scanners. Heavy stuff. Security-relevant information is the critical data behind your defenses. Firewall rules, cryptographic keys, detailed system architecture diagrams, access control lists, basically the blueprints of your security. Access to these things needs to be super tightly controlled, explicitly granted only when absolutely necessary. Third, C, periodic review. Privileges aren't static. People change roles, projects end, needs evolve. You must regularly review the privileges assigned to roles or specific user groups to validate their continued need.
So, checking. Is this privilege still justified for this role? Did the user's job change? Did that project wrap up, making this access obsolete?
Exactly. Many organizations do this quarterly or annually, or maybe trigger it whenever there are big organizational shifts. You can't just set permissions and forget them. And finally, D, reassign remove. This flows directly from those reviews. You have to adjust privileges as needed. That means either reassigning them to new, more appropriate roles that match current duties, or, crucially, removing them entirely if they're no longer required. Automation can definitely help here, flagging things for review, but human oversight and policy enforcement are still paramount.
Let's apply this least privilege thing to our tech startup again. Let's say they have a marketing team. They occasionally need to view redacted CUI for public stuff, maybe a fact sheet on a federal project, but they absolutely should never modify it or, critically, see the unredacted version. How does least privilege lock that down?
Okay, good scenario. For this, the startup would meticulously configure their marketing role accounts. These accounts would be set up to only allow read-only access. And not just anywhere, but to a very specific, segregated folder containing only the pre-redacted CUI docs meant for public use.
So they can't even browse to the real stuff.
Nope. If a marketing team member somehow clicks a link or tries to navigate to an unredacted CUI folder, boom, access denied. Permission denied message pops up. These accounts would be explicitly blocked from touching engineering design files, financial records, any other unredacted CUI, even if it's technically part of the CUI landscape. And very importantly, annually, or whenever there are big changes, the COISO Chief Information Security Officer would review the marketing team's access, make sure no one accidentally got right access, or maybe someone moved departments and doesn't need any CUI access anymore. If so, revoke it immediately.
Gotcha. That level of precision prevents some potentially really costly mistakes. So yeah, it's not about being stingy, it's about being strategically precise, like a finely tuned machine, right? Every part has its exact minimal function. Efficient, but also drastically cutting down the chances for accidents and malicious exploits. It's about minimizing your exposure, knowing that if an attacker does get in somehow, their movement is going to be severely restricted inside your vault. They can't just wander around. Now, building on the general idea of least privilege, we move to a specific, even more stringent application, 03.01.06 least privileged accounts. Okay, so if the general principle is just enough access for everyday tasks, then these privileged accounts, these are your master keys, the keys to the kingdom, as people often say. These are the accounts that can change fundamental system settings, create new users, delete critical data, access pretty much anything. So given their immense power, why do these accounts need even more rigorous controls, special handling compared to standard user accounts? What makes them such a prime target?
Well, the reason privileged accounts, your administrator, root, superuser accounts need such heightened security is precisely because they have those extensive, often system-wide permissions. They are, by far, the #1 target for attackers. Compromising just one such account can lead to a catastrophic CUI breach. It can give an adversary complete unfettered control over your systems. They could exfiltrate huge amounts of sensitive data, deploy ransomware across your entire network, or even just destroy critical information. So they absolutely require a security posture that's orders of magnitude stronger than standard user accounts. You have to recognize they are literally the digital keys to your entire kingdom, your entire vault.
Okay, so how do you handle these incredibly powerful accounts then to mitigate that massive risk? What are the specific requirements NIST lays out to keep these master keys safe?
This requirement really focuses on two absolutely critical parts. They're designed to drastically limit the exposure and the potential misuse of these powerful accounts. First, A, restrict personnel. You have to strictly limit privileged accounts on the system to organization-defined personnel or roles. This means only a very select, highly trusted few individuals should ever have these accounts.
People whose jobs absolutely demand it.
Exactly. We're talking senior system admins, network architects, security officers, maybe specific database admins. This isn't about who might need it occasionally for a quick fix. It's about who must have it as a core part of their ongoing responsibility. And regular audits of who holds these accounts are critical to make sure this restriction stays tight. Second, B, separate accounts. This is a crucial concept, often called dual hatting, or sometimes separation of duties, even for a single person. It requires that users who have privileged accounts must use separate, non-privileged accounts when they're doing non-security functions or accessing non-security information.
So if I'm an admin, I have two accounts, my super user one and a regular one.
Yes, you have your admin account, and you also have a separate regular user account. The whole idea is to prevent cross-contamination of privileges. Think about it. If an admin is browsing the web with their super powerful account and accidentally clicks a malicious link,
Boom! Attacker gets admin rights instantly.
precisely. By separating them, you force the admin to switch to their less privileged account for routine stuff like email, browsing, general office work. It effectively shrinks the window of opportunity for compromise.
Let's think about our startup's lead IT admin, Jane. She's the one who absolutely needs that super user account to manage servers, CUI databases. It's her core job. How does this dual hatting play out in her day-to-day?
Okay, for Jane, this means she has two distinct accounts, and just as importantly, two distinct workflows. One is her standard user account. She uses that for all her regular non-admin work, checking email, browsing the web for tech news, using Word or Excel, collaborating on non-CUI project docs. Her second account is a separate, highly secured administrator account. She only logs into that one when she needs to perform specific, privileged system tasks, applying server updates, configuring network gear, directly managing CUI databases. This prevents that common attack vector. If Jane accidentally clicks a phishing link while checking her email on her standard account, her admin privileges aren't immediately compromised because they're tied to a completely different, isolated account.
She doesn't mix her highly sensitive keys to the kingdom with her everyday house keys.
That's a perfect way to put it. It takes a bit more discipline, maybe an extra login step, but it provides a massive security gain.
Yeah, it's like that safety deposit box analogy. You wouldn't carry the key to the bank's main vault around with your house keys, right? You keep it separate, secure, use it only when absolutely necessary for its specific high-stakes purpose. It's a simple concept, often overlooked maybe, but the impact is profound. A small, disciplined habit preventing potentially huge, organization-crippling damage. Okay, next up, we have a control that might seem like just a formality, but in the CUI context, it's actually a cornerstone of accountability. 03.01.09 system use notification. You know those messages. The ones that pop up when you log into a corporate network. Warning, this system is for authorized use only, blah, blah, blah.
And everyone clicks through them.
Exactly. They're often dismissed as just annoying formalities, legal jargon you ignore. But in the world of CUI, they're actually a surprisingly crucial security control. Why? Why are these system use notifications so important for protecting sensitive data? What purpose do they really serve beyond being a text block you just click past?
You're right, they're far from mere formalities. They serve incredibly important legal, policy, and even, you could argue, psychological purposes. They ensure users are explicitly aware, or at least have been made aware, of the system's acceptable use policies, any relevant privacy notices, and critically, the security rules governing their actions before they get any access at all. It's about setting a clear understanding of user responsibilities, the fact that activities might be monitored, the potential consequences of misuse, all consistent with CUI handling rules. Without this explicit notification, a user could potentially claim ignorance of policies later on. That significantly complicates enforcement, accountability, and maybe even legal action if there's a breach or misuse. It sets the baseline for informed consent and accountability in your digital vault.
Okay, so what are the key elements of a good system use notification then? And how should it be deployed to be most effective? What's the practical side of this digital welcome mat with rules?
The requirement is actually quite specific about what needs to happen. First, you must display a message. You need to prominently display a system use notification message. It has to clearly include privacy and security notices. And crucially, this message must be entirely consistent with applicable CUI rules. It should probably reference the organization's own policies for handling CUI. The language needs to be unambiguous, easy to grasp, and legally sound. Second, timing. This is key. The message must appear before access is granted. So typically, it shows up before a user successfully logs in, presents them with the terms right at the gate before they can even touch the system, ensures they're aware before they act. Third, scope. The requirement specifically targets human user interfaces where a person directly interacts with the login screen. It's not necessarily required for non-human interfaces, like system-to-system automated connections. However, organizations should probably think carefully if secondary notifications might be needed for accessing specific highly sensitive applications after the initial network login, especially if those apps handle different CUI categories or have unique extra rules.
And lastly, alternative. NIST does acknowledge that sometimes tech isn't the only answer, especially in certain environments. Things like posters or other printed materials can serve the same purpose instead of an automated message, particularly where digital interfaces are limited or maybe a physical reminder is just more effective for getting that initial notification across.
Let's think about our tech startup again. When new employees log into their company-issued laptops for the very first time, what should they expect to see to meet this requirement?
Okay, for our startup, when that new employee boots up their machine, goes to log in for the first time, a prominent, unmissable banner would pop up. Probably right before the login prompt itself. It might say something like, "Warning, this system is for authorized use only," All activities are monitored and logged. Unauthorized access or use is strictly prohibited and may result in disciplinary action, including termination and legal penalties. By proceeding, you consent to monitoring and agree to abide by the company's full CUI handling policy and IT security procedures.
And then you have to click accept or something.
Typically, yeah, an accept or I understand button to proceed. This immediate, explicit notification sets a clear precedent for responsible CUI handling right from the very first interaction. It reinforces the organization's policies, makes it really hard for anyone to claim ignorance later, basically tells them this is a secure vault and here are the rules for using it.
It really is more than a formality. It's a powerful statement of accountability. Ensures everyone knows the rules of the road before they even start driving. That understanding is key to both compliance and actual security. It's like digital informed consent. Okay, moving on to a very common, yet maybe often overlooked, control. Critical for protecting CUI that's just sitting there in plain sight. 03.01.0 device locks. We've all done it right. You step away from your computer, quick chat with a colleague, grab a coffee, take a quick call. Just for a minute, you think. What if you forget to lock your screen? That's a critical moment where CUI, if it's visible on your display, can be exposed. Just sitting there for anyone walking by your desk. Why are these seemingly simple device locks a non-negotiable requirement for CUI protection? What's the immediate vulnerability they stop?
This requirement directly tackles that very real and surprisingly common vulnerability of unattended systems. A device lock provides an immediate temporary layer of protection. It's absolutely crucial for preventing unauthorized people from viewing or accessing CUI when a user is temporarily away. It's a quick privacy and security measure. An instant shield against shoulder surfing, someone literally looking over your shoulder or just opportunistic access by someone passing your desk. Without it, even a few seconds of an unlocked screen showing CUI can lead to a significant, easily preventable compromise. Think of it like shutting the door to your vault, even if you're just stepping away for a moment.
So what's the practical side of implementing this? How do organizations make sure this instant shield is actually in place across all devices that might show CUI?
The core action is pretty straightforward, but consistent application is definitely key. You must implement lock. This means putting a device lock in place. It can be at the operating system level, think the familiar Windows lock screen or macOS screensaver with a password prompt, or even at the application level for really sensitive CUI apps. The main purpose is to conceal information previously visible on the display. Replace it with a publicly viewable image, like a generic screensaver or, more commonly, that login prompt. So even if someone glances at the screen, they can't see the sensitive CUI you were just working on. Now, it's important to remember these locks are specifically for temporary absences. They are not a substitute for fully logging out at the end of the day or for longer periods. Logging out provides a much more complete session termination. And finally, initiation. How does the lock happen? Two ways. It can be user-initiated, like using a keyboard shortcut, Win plus L on Windows, Control plus Command plus Q on macOS. That requires the user to actively do something.
Or policy-based, right?
Automatic. Exactly. And this is increasingly common, highly recommended for consistency. It can be policy-based, meaning the system automatically locks itself after a set period of user inactivity, maybe 5 or 10 minutes. This ensures consistency even if a user forgets or gets suddenly pulled away.
Let's picture our tech startup again, maybe in their busy open office. An engineer is deep into sensitive CUI designs, has to step away quickly for an unexpected urgent call. How does this control protect that CUI?
Okay, in that open office scenario, the company's IT policy would configure all workstations handling CUI to automatically lock after, say, 5 minutes of keyboard or mouse inactivity. That's the policy-based control, the safety net. Additionally, the engineer would be rigorously trained, encouraged to develop the habit of manually locking their screen every single time they leave their desk, even for a moment, using that Win plus L shortcut for instant protection.
So both manual habit and automatic backup.
Exactly. That proactive behavior is critical because 5 minutes can actually be a long time for someone looking to peek. This dual approach ensures that even if the engineer forgets in the rush, the system quickly steps in, prevents anyone walking by from seeing sensitive CUI on the screen, keeps that info confidential. It's like clicking the deadbolt on your vault door every time you step away, even for a second.
It's such a small habit, isn't it? Like putting on a seatbelt. But it's absolutely critical, maybe often overlooked safety measure for CUI, especially in today's open offices or even working from home, just being constantly mindful of what's on your screen. You wouldn't leave your car keys in the ignition with the door open, right? So don't leave your CUI exposed. Okay. Building on device locks for short breaks, let's look at a control for a longer inactivity or specific events. 03.01.11 session termination. So we just talked about device locks, that quick shield for a coffee break. But what if that coffee break turns into an hour-long meeting? Or maybe it's the end of the day and someone just walks away without logging out. That's when a simple screen lock isn't really enough. We need to talk about completely shutting down access. What's the fundamental difference between a device lock and session termination? And why is session termination so important for CUI?
That's a great distinction, and it's critical for protecting CUI. A device lock, remember, just conceals the display. The underlying user session, with all its processes and access privileges, it's still active, still vulnerable. Session termination, on the other hand, focuses on completely ending the logical user session itself. It's not just breaking a network connection. It prevents unauthorized access to idle or abandoned active sessions. That significantly reduces the window of opportunity for an attacker to exploit an open CUI session.
So it actually logs you out.
Exactly. It's about completely ending active user access to the system. If a session is terminated, all system processes associated with that user's access are effectively shut down. Protects CUI from prolonged unattended exposure, frees up system resources. It's like a digital cleanup crew, automatically closing your open files and logging you out of the vault completely.
Okay, so if it's about completely ending the session, how do organizations define when that should happen automatically? What kind of specific defined disconnects are we talking about?
The core of this requirement is pretty clear. Terminate automatically. You must automatically terminate a user session after organization-defined conditions or trigger events requiring session disconnect. So, your organization decides what those specific conditions or triggers are based on your risk appetite and operational needs.
Okay, like what kind of conditions?
These conditions or triggers can be varied, tailored to different situations. Common examples include a specific period of user inactivity, maybe 30 minutes if there's no keyboard or mouse activity. Time of day restrictions like the system automatically logging out everyone from CUI systems after business hours, say 7 p.m. Or specific responses to security incidents. If a system gets flagged as potentially compromised, maybe all active sessions on it get immediately terminated as a protective step. And the scope of this termination is important. It ends all system processes associated with that user's logical session. The only exceptions might be processes the user explicitly set up to keep running after logout, usually non-interactive background tasks, not directly handling CUI, designed to persist. But the key is severing the user's active connection and access to CUI.
Our tech startup has lots of remote workers accessing CUI from home. This seems like a perfect scenario where session termination would be absolutely critical.
It absolutely is. Remote work inherently stretches your risk perimeter way beyond the controlled office. To manage that heightened risk, the company would definitely implement a policy. Maybe automatically terminate any CUI-related user session after, say, 60 minutes of user inactivity. This means if a remote employee steps away for a long lunch or just forgets to log out before heading out for the day, the system automatically ends their CUI session.
That prevents someone else in the house from using the computer, or if the device itself gets compromised while the session's just sitting there open.
Exactly. It's a vital safety net for CUI when those traditional office boundaries just aren't there. It ensures the vault door always closes behind you, even if you forget to close it yourself.
Yeah, that's about proactive risk management. You just don't want CUI sitting out there in an active session any longer than absolutely necessary. Limit the exposure constantly. Have that digital cleanup crew always on standby. Okay, now let's talk about the expanded frontier of your network, 03.01.12 remote access. Remote work is undeniably here to stay. It's revolutionized how we operate, offers amazing flexibility, but that flexibility also pushes your organizational boundaries way outside your physical office walls. Accessing your system from outside your physical location over the internet, for example, that's a massive potential vulnerability. What makes remote access such a high-stakes game for CUI? Why does it demand such rigorous control?
You're absolutely right. Remote access significantly increases the attack surface. Why? Because it typically happens over external, less controlled networks, public Wi-Fi, home internet, networks outside your direct control, probably lacking the security measures of your internal corporate network. This requirement is designed specifically to mitigate that higher risk by ensuring strict controls, explicit authorization, continuous monitoring of all remote connections to systems that process, store, or transmit CUI. The primary concern: unauthorized disclosure of CUI. An attacker gaining remote access could potentially bypass many internal controls. If they succeed, they're effectively inside your vault, potentially from anywhere in the world.
So, how do you secure this extended frontier, especially when your workforce might be scattered globally? What are the strict gatekeeping measures needed to keep CUI protected, even when accessed from thousands of miles away?
This requirement has several critical parts, all aimed at building a secure remote bridge to your CUI. First, restrictions. You need to establish clear usage restrictions, configuration requirements, and connection requirements for each type of allowable remote access. So distinguish between, say, a VPN for employees, a secure web portal for partners, specific secure channels for contractors. Each method needs its own defined rules: who can use it, what security settings are mandatory on the device, how they must connect. Second, prior authorization. Non-negotiable. You must authorize each type of remote access before it's established. No ad hoc, unapproved connections allowed. This ensures deliberate planning, a clear business need, formal approval for every remote pathway into your CUI environment. It's not a free-for-all. Every connection gets vetted. Third, manage access points. All remote access must route through authorized and managed access control points. Think of these as your digital border checkpoints, secured gateways, firewalls with specific rule sets, dedicated VPN concentrators. This centralizes control, makes monitoring way more efficient, funnels all remote traffic through a known secured path, greatly reduces susceptibility. It's like making sure everyone enters and exits the vault through one single guarded entrance. Fourth, privileged access. Extra scrutiny here. Remote execution of privileged commands and remote access to security-relevant information needs specific authorization. So if an admin needs to manage a CUI server remotely, that specific remote admin capability needs its own explicit authorization layer. Often involves things like just-in-time access, where permissions are granted only for the duration of the task. And finally, the discussion really highlights that continuous monitoring of remote user connection activities is absolutely key. It's not just setting up the rules, it's actively detecting attacks, identifying suspicious behavior, ensuring ongoing compliance with your remote access policies. You need to know who's on that remote bridge, what they're doing, and when they leave.
Let's apply this to our startups engineers again. They often work from home, need to access CUI directly on the internal network, not just through cloud apps.
Okay, for those engineers, the startup would implement a robust virtual private network, a VPN solution. This VPN would be configured with strong, modern encryption, protecting all data traveling over public networks. Critically, it would require multi-factor authentication to connect, adding that extra security layer beyond just a password. Their usage restrictions would dictate CUI can only be accessed over this secure VPN, and they would explicitly prohibit something called split tunneling.
Split tunneling, what's that?
It's where a user simultaneously accesses external networks, like their home Wi-Fi, and the internal network via the VPN.
Yeah.
Imagine you're on a secure armored highway, the VPN, but you also have a side road connecting you directly to a potentially unsecure local street, your personal home Wi-Fi.
Ah, so stuff could leak out the side road.
It's denied. Exactly. It prevents CUI from accidentally leaking or being routed through those untrusted, unsecured paths, which can bypass your corporate security controls. So no split tunneling. Every VPN connection, all associated activities would be meticulously logged, regularly audited to catch suspicious behavior or policy violations, and any access to admin tools over VPN. Strictly restricted to specific pre-authorized users, maybe only during defined time windows, another layer of control for privileged remote access.
Right, remote access isn't just a convenience, it's definitely a calculated risk. Demands a robust, well-defined, constantly monitored security strategy. It's about extending your secure perimeter intelligently, making sure your home office is just as much a part of the vault as your physical one. Okay, shifting slightly to another network type, one we use constantly, 03.01.16 wireless access. Wireless tech is amazing for flexibility, right? It's everywhere, homes, offices, lets us connect almost instantly. But it's also an invisible gateway. Without proper controls, your Wi-Fi network could become a super highway for unauthorized CUI access simply because the signals are broadcast through the air. What makes wireless access a distinct and particularly challenging security problem compared to, say, plugging in a wire?
The fundamental challenge with wireless is its inherent nature, broadcasting signals through the air. Makes them potentially accessible to anyone within physical range. Unlike a physical wire, which needs direct, intentional physical access to a port, this broadcast characteristic significantly increases the risk of unauthorized access from outsiders. Things like deploying rogue access points by attackers, or evil twin attacks where a fake Wi-Fi network mimics your legitimate one to steal credentials. This requirement aims specifically to reduce that susceptibility. by enforcing strict usage and configuration rules, making sure these invisible pathways don't become wide open doors to your CUI vault.
So how do you put up those invisible fences, secure these pervasive wireless connections effectively, and make sure CUI doesn't just leak into the airwaves?
There are three critical components to effectively securing wireless and protecting CUI. First, A, restrictions. You need clear usage restrictions, configuration requirements, and connection requirements for each type of wireless access. Distinguish between, say, your dedicated corporate Wi-Fi for CUI access, maybe using WPA3 encryption, strong authentication, a general corporate network Wi-Fi for everyday tasks with different security, and a separate, isolated guest Wi-Fi. Each needs its own security posture, authorized users, and CUI should only ever travel over the most secure designated network. Second B, prior authorization. Just like remote access, you must authorize each type of wireless access before connections are established. Prevents unauthorized devices just hopping onto your network. This could involve ambiguous address filtering, but more robustly, things like certificate-based authentication for devices or solutions that integrate with your identity system. Ensure only approved devices and users connect. No rogue access points or unauthorized personal devices should touch your CUI environment without explicit permission. Third, and this is really important for cutting down attack vectors, C, disable unused capabilities. When wireless networking capabilities are not intended for use on a device, they must be disabled before you issue or deploy that device.
Like on a server in a data center.
Exactly. If you have a server sitting securely in a rack, connected only by wire, its wireless card should be physically or logically turned off from the start. Prevents an unused, potentially vulnerable access point from ever being activated or found by an attacker. Effectively eliminates a potential backdoor. The discussion also really highlights using strong authentication protocols, ones that protect credentials and provide mutual authentication for both people and devices connecting wirelessly. And special attention is needed for small mobile devices, smartphones, smartwatches which use wireless constantly and could inadvertently expose CUI if not managed properly, as they're often outside typical corporate controls.
Let's apply this to our startup's main office. They have Wi-Fi all over the building.
Okay, at our startup, they'd implement a highly secure, segmented Wi-Fi network specifically for CUI access. Totally distinct, separate, maybe on a different VLAN, from their general corporate network and any guest Wi-Fi. Only company-issued laptops configured with a strong encryption like WPA3 Enterprise and requiring certificate-based authentication from a trusted source would be allowed onto this dedicated CUI network if a personal device tried. Denied. Furthermore, all company-issued servers and desktops deployed with their wireless capabilities permanently disabled unless there's a specific documented business need. This proactive disabling of unused features significantly shrinks the wireless attack surface. It's about building strong, invisible walls around your CUI, even in the air.
Wireless is super convenient. We all love it. But yeah, never assume it's inherently secure. Proactively disabling unused features, rigorously segmenting your networks into distinct zones that can prevent a lot of common dangerous attacks on your CUI. Recognizing that invisible pathways need invisible but strong fences. Okay, next, let's talk about maybe the most pervasive and personal devices handling CUI today. 03.01.18, access control for mobile devices, smartphones, tablets, even smartwatches. CUI can literally be in your pocket, on your wrist, in your backpack. These devices are incredibly portable, easily lost or stolen, frequently connect to all sorts of networks, secure and insecure. What makes mobile devices such a unique and significant challenge for CUI protection? What sets them apart from traditional laptops or desktops?
Mobile devices are indeed distinct. Their small size, extreme portability, inherent wireless operation, often personal nature. This mix makes CUI on them highly susceptible to loss, physical compromise, unauthorized disclosure. Unlike a desktop locked in an office, a phone could be left on a train, stolen from a car, just misplaced. Plus, they function as full-fledged computers now, right? Capable of processing, storing sensitive info, often outside controlled physical environments like an office or data center. This creates a much broader, often less controlled risk landscape. Needs tailored controls, way beyond what you'd apply to a fixed workstation. It's like trying to secure a piece of your belt that's constantly on the move.
So how do you protect CUI when it's literally on the go? Often in an employee's pocket or backpack, constantly connecting to new, potentially untrusted networks. What does this portable protection actually look like?
This requirement outlines several critical actions, really acknowledging the unique challenges of mobile CUI. First, A, restrictions. You need specific usage restrictions, configuration requirements, and connection requirements, tailored just for mobile devices. What functions can they perform? Can they access all CUI or only specific types? How must they be set up before deployment? How can they securely connect, define, and enforce all that? This includes policies on app whitelisting, preventing sideloading of unapproved apps, maybe implementing data loss prevention, DLP measures. Second, B, authorization. You must authorize the connection of each mobile device to the system. No unapproved personal devices should be connecting to or handling CUI. Every device that will handle CUI needs to be known, managed, controlled by the organization, typically through mobile device management, MDM, or maybe mobile application management, MAM solutions. Third, and this is a critical technical control, C, encryption. You must implement full device or container-based encryption to protect CUI confidentiality on mobile devices.
Full device or container-based, what's the difference?
Good question. Full device encryption encrypts the entire storage, makes all data unreadable if the device falls into the wrong hands. Container-based encryption isolates and encrypts only specific apps or data containers. This can be useful for BYOD, bring your own device scenarios, keeping personal and CUI data separate and encrypted within its own secure bubble. Both aim to prevent unauthorized access if the device is lost or stolen. The discussion also stresses considering additional controls to bolster mobile security. Rigorous configuration management, strong device identification and authentication biometrics, strong passcodes, mandatory protective software like mobile antivirus or EDR, regular scanning for malware, prompt updates, integrity checks, disabling unnecessary hardware like Bluetooth or NFC if not needed for CUI tasks. Importantly, the discussion emphasizes protection for mobile devices is often highly behavior or policy-based. It requires users to take physical action to protect them outside controlled areas. You can't just rely on tech. User diligence, awareness are paramount.
Let's think about our startup again. Their field engineers use company-issued tablets to access CUI blueprints right at client sites or remote locations.
Okay, for those field engineers, the company would enforce strict policies. Absolutely prohibit personal mobile devices from touching CUI. Each company-issued tablet would be individually authorized and enrolled in their MDM system. It would require multi-factor authentication for access and, critically, must have full device encryption enabled to protect CUI at rest. These tablets would be pre-configured via MDM to enforce all security policies, continuously scan for malware, ensure all OS and app updates are installed promptly, maybe automatically. Beyond the tech controls, the engineers get specific, mandatory training on physically securing their tablets, never leave them unattended in a vehicle, keep them in sight in public, report loss or theft immediately. That's a vital part of their behavior-based CUI protection duty. The MDM also allows for remote wipe capability if a device is ever lost or stolen, a last resort to protect the CUI.
Yeah. Mobility is super convenient, a necessity today, but introduces significant concentrated risk for CUI. Robust encryption, strong authentication, clear enforced usage policies for mobile, combined with user awareness, that's your essential digital safety net, ensures your CUI vault isn't compromised just because it's on the move. Moving to our final few requirements now, let's tackle 03.01.20, use of external systems. In our incredibly interconnected world, you rarely work in a total bubble, right? Organizations constantly use cloud services, collaborate with third-party contractors, partner with external entities for all sorts of services. But here's the rub. When CUI touches systems you don't directly control or own systems outside your defined authorization boundary, you're essentially extending your circle of trust. Why is this outsourcing, while often beneficial, so inherently risky for CUI? And what's your organization's precise responsibility here?
You've hit a critical point. Using external systems, those outside your defined boundary for processing, storing, or transmitting CUI, introduces significant risk, precisely because you typically lack direct, real-time control over their security. You don't manage their patching, their physical security, their employee training, their incident response directly. This requirement is crucial because it ensures that even when CUI is handled by external providers, it remains robustly protected. And critically, your organization retains ultimate responsibility for managing that risk.
So you can't just hand it off and wash your hands of it?
Absolutely not. You can outsource a service like data storage, payroll, but you absolutely cannot outsource the accountability for CUI protection. The liability for a CUI breach still largely rests with your organization.
Okay, so how do you manage this inherent risk with systems you don't own? Ensure your CUI vault stays secure even when parts of it are effectively managed by someone else. What are the practical, maybe contractual controls needed?
This requirement involves several critical multi-stage steps to establish a trusted relationship for CUI. First, A, prohibition by default. The default stance, by NIST's design, is to explicitly prohibit the use of any external systems unless they are specifically authorized by your organization. Prevents that ad hoc, unvetted use of third-party services for CUI, a major source of accidental exposure. Second, B. Defined requirements. Before even considering an external system, you must establish and document organization-defined terms, conditions, and security requirements that must be satisfied on these external systems before you allow their use or access. This means you dictate the security baseline the external system must meet. You tell them your specific CUI security needs, encryption standards, data residency, whatever. Third, C verification and agreement. You can only permit authorized individuals to use an external system for CUI after two crucial conditions are meticulously met. 1. Verification. You must verify the required security requirements have actually been implemented on the external system, not just taking their word for it. Requires thorough due diligence.
Like checking their audits, SOC2 reports, FedRAMP.
Exactly. Reviewing independent audit reports like SOC2 Type 2, which cover controls over time relevant to security, availability, confidentiality, etc. Checking for FedRAMP authorization for cloud services. You might also use security questionnaires or even conduct on-site audits if the risk warrants it. 2. Retention of agreement. You must keep formal, approved system connection or processing agreements with the external organization. These agreements, robust SLAs, maybe business associate agreements, BAAs, legally bind the external provider to your security requirements. Outlines their responsibilities for CUI protection, incident reporting, compliance. And finally, the discussion highlights this requirement's close link to 03.16.3 external system services, which further emphasizes clearly defining user roles, responsibilities including those shared between you and external providers, and implementing ongoing compliance monitoring. It's not a one-time check, it's a continuous relationship of trust and verification.
Let's imagine our startup wants to use a third-party cloud storage provider for some CUI data, maybe to collaborate more easily with a federal agency or another contractor.
Okay, in that case, the startup's first step is a very thorough vetting process. They need to ensure the chosen cloud provider explicitly meets NIST 800-171R3 requirements. Conduct a detailed security assessment. Yes, requesting and scrutinizing their SOC2 Type 2 reports, checking FedRAMP authorization status. Once satisfied with the verification, they then negotiate and sign a robust service-level agreement, an SLA. It has to explicitly outline the cloud provider's responsibilities for CUI protection. Detail requirements like specific encryption standards, access controls they must enforce, how they report security incidents back to the startup, maybe even data residency requirements where the CUI can physically be stored. Only after this rigorous verification and the formal agreement is signed, sealed, delivered, would the cloud service be authorized for CUI. And then, only specific authorized users within the startup could upload CUI to it. You're essentially co-managing a part of your vault, even if it's on someone else's property.
That is a powerful reminder. You can outsource a service, but you can never, ever outsource the risks or the ultimate responsibility. Vetting your external partners, formalizing security expectations through robust, legally binding agreements, absolutely non-negotiable for CUI protection. It's about ensuring your extended supply chain of trust is just as strong as your internal controls. Okay, for our last requirement in access control today, let's talk about 03.01.22, publicly accessible content. Sometimes, the biggest data leaks aren't from sophisticated hackers breaking in. They're from accidental exposure. Think content inadvertently posted on public websites, shared on social media, maybe uploaded to public forums. Why does NIST specifically call this out the risk of publicly accessible CUI? It seems so obvious, yet these incidents happen with alarming frequency. What makes this so dangerous and often irreversible?
It happens precisely because of that potential obvious oversight, coupled with the lightning speed of the internet. This requirement addresses the critical need to prevent inadvertent disclosure of CUI or any other non-public info to the general public. The danger is profound. Once CUI is publicly accessible, even for a brief moment, say an unredacted doc accidentally uploaded to a public web server, its confidentiality is immediately irrevocably lost. And once it's out there, especially online, quickly indexed by search engines, copied, distributed, it becomes extremely difficult, if not impossible, to contain or retrieve that information. It's like letting the genie out of the bottle. You simply cannot put it back. The damage has done potentially significant financial penalties, reputational harm, loss of trust.
So what's the simple overarching rule here? And how do organizations put practical measures in place to prevent these incredibly damaging accidental leaks, especially in our always online, share-first world?
The core action is very direct. Requires both proactive and reactive measures. You must prevent disclosure. take robust measures to prevent the system from publicly disclosing CUI or any other non-public info. This means proactive controls like rigorous review processes for all content before it goes public, and reactive responses having a rapid incident response plan ready to immediately address a leak if it occurs, maybe involving requesting content takedowns from websites. Crucially, this prevention must align with compliance. All actions need to be entirely consistent with applicable laws, executive orders, directives, policies, regulations, standards governing CUI. This adds a critical legal and regulatory layer to the technical and procedural controls. Ensures your organization isn't just securing data, but also upholding its legal obligations regarding CUI.
Let's think about our tech startups marketing team again. They're excited, launching a new public website section detailing some of their federal contract work, showcasing their expertise. How do they navigate this without accidentally leaking CUI?
Okay. Before any content related to that federal contract, even seemingly innocuous public-facing info goes live on the website, it must undergo a rigorous, probably multi-stage CUI review process. A dedicated CUI officer or specially trained personnel would explicitly check every single piece of information: text, images, embedded documents, even file metadata. Ensure no CUI like specific unredacted project details, proprietary tech developed under the contract, names of specific federal personnel is accidentally published.
So it needs that human check, not just relying on tools.
Absolutely.
Okay.
This is a critical manual, human-centric check that automated tools often can't fully replace. Nuance matters. If, for instance, a draft document with CUI was accidentally uploaded to a public cloud storage link and discovered, it must be immediately removed, and the incident thoroughly investigated. How did the lapse happen? What was the scope of exposure? Implement corrective actions to prevent it happening again. It's constant vigilance, assuming anything published can instantly go global.
Yeah. In our always online share first world, this control is such a stark reminder. Assume anything public is instantly global, and once it's out there, it's out forever. A single moment of carelessness, a missed review. Lasting, irreversible consequences for CUI confidentiality, like leaving the vault door open with the contents on display for the whole world, a powerful lesson in digital permanence. Wow. What a journey through the access control family. We've really seen how meticulously managing accounts, enforcing least privilege, especially for those critical privileged accounts, securing remote and wireless access, diligently controlling mobile devices, rigorously vetting external systems, and actively preventing public disclosure. They're all interconnected foundational layers, building a truly robust, hopefully impenetrable shield for your controlled, unclassified information. Each piece feels like a vital part of your digital vault's defenses.
That's exactly right. Access control isn't just some disconnected list of rules you check off. It's a dynamic, ongoing process, defining, monitoring, adapting who, what, and how CUI is accessed within your organization. It truly is the primary line of defense in ensuring the confidentiality of your controlled, unclassified information. Every control we discussed today reinforces the others, creating a comprehensive security posture, an intricate web of protection for your most sensitive data. Without strong access controls, honestly, it's impossible to truly trust who's interacting with your CUI.
So as we wrap up this deep dive into access control, you might be thinking, okay, so we know who should have access and how to manage that access, but how do we really know they are who they say they are when they try to log in every single time?
Exactly. And that tees us up perfectly for our next deep dive: identification and authentication. In that session, we'll explore how organizations rigorously verify identities, the importance of moving beyond simple passwords to much stronger credentials, and how leveraging multi-factor authentication creates even stronger digital security layers, building directly on the access controls we've discussed today to make sure only legitimate users can even get a foot in the door.
So as you go about your day, maybe consider this. If you had to describe your organization's core access philosophy in just one sentence, what would it be? Is it primarily about convenience first? Or is it fundamentally about security first? And how might even a subtle shift in that philosophy fundamentally change your CUI protection for the better, making your digital vault truly, truly unbreachable? That's all for this deep dive. Thank you for joining us on this expedition into CUI protection. We'll be back soon with more insights to help you stay well-informed and well-protected in our complex world. Until next time, stay curious and stay secure.